Managing Day to Day with me, Christina Laster, and National Parents Union. I hope you're all well. I hope you're all thriving. Hello, America's beautiful children. We love you. And so welcome back. I don't know how your weekend was. Mine's had some ups and downs, but you know what? We make it moment by moment, day by day. And so in that we have the victory. I'm so glad that you're here. I have some special guests, and I will bring them in at this time. And we will also have a continuation with these special guests this week. So stay tuned. We have some great information and great news coming up for you. Hello, Angie. Hi, how are you?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, Ramsey. How are you?
I'm doing real good. How are you?
I'm great. So can you tell our viewers who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'll say just good morning and good afternoon to you, Christina. Thank you to you, Managing Day by Day and the National Parents Union for this opportunity. My name is Ramsey J. Jr., and I currently serve as the president of the board of directors for the Black Students of California United. And I am beyond thrilled that you actually have the real person you need to have here, and that's one of our founders of the BSCU and board member and Miss Angie Barfield. So I think she should have the first word officially, but I wanted to greet you and say thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. I appreciate you guys taking your time and coming and giving us and our audience and our viewers this information.
Well, Christina, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
I'm Angie Barfield. I am one of the 4 co-founders of Black Students of California United, which was established in 2016. And we did it for kids.
Yes.
Our children needed their voice. They demanded to have a seat. They wanted to learn and all these different things. And 4 amazing people came together and said, how do we give them what we've been given to become strong voices to change education in the state of California? So we definitely love our babies here. Love your shirt too. Yes, they do. Yes. Education, not incarceration.
Thank you. Right. And we often talk about how important education is, and I teach my children that education is a mode for freedom from oppression, right? And people fought for you guys to be able to be educated, and so don't take it for granted, and so it's something that our children definitely need to understand, to utilize as a vehicle for freedom. Talk about liberation, talking about giving back, reaching to the next generation. So I'm so appreciative of what you guys do. Can you tell me more about Black Students of California United?
Sure. So we are a 5-year, so we're still a baby, but we're a 5-year organization that is strongly committed to empowering our young people, both culturally and civically. We saw the need for our children to learn leadership because they were not getting it in our schools, as some of our research showed that in many of California's high schools and middle schools, our African-American children are not in leadership. They're not in ASB, or the leadership that they are in, it's painting posters, things like that. It was like, that's not leadership. It's not giving you your voice. So what we did was we decided that, our children are asking for us to train them so that they can begin to learn to speak to administrators.
Yes.
And I can say that in our 5 years of being in existence, we have already seen a change. Our children are not afraid to speak in front of boards. They are not afraid to go to their principals. They are not afraid to speak to their superintendents. Proud to say, that here, and I live in Fresno County, Ramsey's in Los Angeles County, but here in Fresno County, our county superintendent embraced the call for student voice, and he started an African-American student advisory cabinet.
That's good.
So that we can hear from Black students, just Black students, right? And so we just, as BSCU, we want to influence and encourage our school districts to embrace our Black children and not be afraid of them, and not feel this need to be intimidated,
right?
To say, and then also hold the teachers accountable. Enough is enough. And our children deserve better. If they're going to be forced to sit in your seats and you collect money for them, you're going to treat them correctly, period.
You know, and I have to say that during the time that I was the education chair with NAACP and looking at the data, just doing civil rights in the education space, I noticed all throughout California, didn't matter if the children were in a more lower socioeconomic community or a higher income community, our Black children were still showing the same data, right? And overall average, looking at the data for the state of California, 80% of Black children couldn't do math at grade level. That should be criminal, right? 67% couldn't read or write at grade level. And, you know, I found that as I was going to figure out more about what was going on, the parents were getting blamed, the students were getting blamed, but I would talk to the students and they'd have a lot of suggestions. They'd have a lot of recommendations. The parents were trying to, you know, figure out what can we do, but they were being opposed. And so having, you know, someone that is open and willing to collaborate, meaningful collaboration and move forward the needle, that's a plus, because still to this day, I know that there are students that have wonderful ways that they know that they want to change the campus to be more accepting, you know, of their ideas and who they are, but they just haven't had a seat at the table and weren't allowed to have one either. So that's great to know. Right.
And that's what we're working to change. And we have made some great strides in our 5 years. We do have districts that reach out to us to ask us for steps, things that they can do better. As you know, Deborah Watkins very well, one of our co-founders.
No, Mama Deborah.
And you know, I can attribute a lot of my growth to what she has given me over the years, and that it's okay to fight for what's right. Right. And it's okay to teach our children to fight for what's right. But we also know that there are avenues we must take. And so what BSCU is really trying to do is to rally these students, these BSU groups throughout California, and give these young people their voice, but also give them the training to use it effectively, so that as they move through their districts, they make impact. You know what I mean? They do what they need to do. And that is just what we're doing. And we've had young people that have taken us aside to say, that's an old way of doing things. It just doesn't work for us, but this works. And we embrace that, this multi-generational stage of learning. BSCU is beginning to embrace that. And it's just amazing to see. And they encourage me in my work every day. So I just think it's important that all of our school districts embrace the fact that Black children are not criminals. They are not enemies. That if you're going to, like I said, if you're going to get paid for them to sit in the seat, you're going to respect them and let them
and the parents and their parents.
Yes, and their parents. Absolutely.
Because my biggest pet peeve is this terminology about parent involvement being tossed around, but the parents aren't welcome. You know, Black parents have been opposed, and I've watched this. And so I always say, enough with the rhetoric, right? What are you doing with the average daily attending Black student? You have your ADA per pupil spending. I need to see how you're educating them and involving their parents, because it's not okay if you don't allow partnerships and then turn around and blame the bad data on the two people that you just failed, the student and the parent, right? It requires parents to drop their children off at school every day. So you got to have some partnership, you know, I mean, it's just natural, right?
And our children are speaking to that. Respect our parents, respect our guardians, respect, you know, whomever. And we're just, you know, Christina, and you probably know this better than anybody, especially when it comes to parent engagement. When their children are well-versed and ready and have the courage to share their experiences, it moves the parents in different ways. And then we find those partners that can embolden and support our parents. Because once you get this coalition moving, it's not gonna stop.
No.
So we want to, but we want our children to be ready so that when their parents come alongside them, we have built this multi-generational coalition that's going to be the most beautiful thing that has ever hit California. But we just need these systems to understand we're coming and we're not playing anymore. So
I agree. I agree. Well, that's amazing. That's amazing. I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing. And I'm so glad that it's cross-generational because that is absolutely necessary. I don't want my children's feelings about school to be my dad's. Like I talk about this all the time. Like, why is my dad able, who is 66, able to relate to my son who's 9, right? With his experience within the educational environment. And what do we do to say, we're going to do this a little bit differently. And we want it to be lasting generationally. You know, I don't want, every generation should do better than the last. And so I'm so glad that you're training up future leaders. That's amazing. Thank you. Shout out to all the beautiful Black students that are involved in that. But we definitely want this to just spread throughout the whole entire state because we're not going anywhere, you know, and we're not backing down. And that's just a fact, right? And so I appreciate that. So what do you guys have going on currently?
I'll jump in here. You guys have done such a great job. I can enjoy this conversation like a spectator in the front row. But let me share just some high level thoughts because I think and fortify some of the commentary that you guys have had already. And for those that are listening, you know, this is such a critical time to be engaged in this conversation. What we can all conclude is this is no longer a spectating opportunity. You've got to participate in this process somewhere in the ecosystem of youth child development, particularly when we're talking about young people of color. The idea that you're going to watch is no longer an option. So you've got to find a role and play it quite well. And that's part of what this National Parents Union does is every parent has a role to play. And now you have a network where you're using best practices to do that. And I think that's what the BSU is beginning to formulate because of the track record that Angie and the founders have had. And part of what we want to suggest, Christina and your guest, is certainly we're going to be advocates for the system and structural changes, but understanding that those things don't change outcomes for the current student today. So what can we be doing to empower the student today within the construct of the current educational system that he or she has to operate in? While we know over time it will get better, we want to improve their ability to process within the structure that they have to go to school in tomorrow. And we can't change that structure tomorrow, but we can begin to build capacity in students to better demonstrate their excellence within that structure today. So that's a long way of saying, what are we doing to actually empower that skill set within students today? And Angie talked quite eloquently about leadership development. You know, how do you get students to recognize their brilliance? Because you know, Christina, as a mother, when your child believes that he or she is brilliant, they will then act differently, even if they're in a system that may suggest otherwise. And when a student believes that they're the best and the brightest, they will respond accordingly. And so what we want to do is make sure at a minimum, every student that comes into the BSU, they hear, and Angie says this better than anybody, but I'm going to do my way of doing it. You're beautiful, you're excellent, you're scholars, you're kings, your queens. Those words of affirmation, imagine being 16, 17 years old and you don't hear that. Versus you hear that every day you come in contact with our organization, you hear that. No matter where you've come from, no matter what obstacles you may be encountering, you are beautiful. I'm gonna say it again because there's somebody listening that needs to just have that affirmation. You are brilliant. You are scholars. We appreciate, not to get into my soapbox, but you got me fired up, Christina, but we gotta be okay, and Angie knows, we gotta be okay with recognizing that the history of our culture does not start in 1619, with all due respect, okay? That's not the story, right? And when you only know that story, it's a deficit mindset. The story begins that the creators of science, of math, the brilliant people who have built the systems upon which systems now were built on, look like you, young person. But when you don't know that story, you don't have that ability to have that brilliance that says, no, 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 I'm not taking science and math because they told me. I'm taking it because, you know what? My ancestors created that for me. That's a much different math class than do chapter 2 because I told you to.
Right.
And so
Right.
I think we're so passionate about the opportunity to, within the system that we'll work on over time, there's things we can do instantly. So we tell, and Angie and the team, the board, they bring speakers in to talk to the students about their history, about where they've come from, about the things that they've created, about the power that they possess. And you will be surprised. We'll get you some notes and you'll hear from our stars tomorrow and Wednesday, but they're going to tell you that until they came to the BSU, they didn't know these things about themselves. And that's what the BSU can provide. I'll give you one example, then give it back to you. But we just completed our 3-day Leadership Institute that we did virtually because of the COVID. And we bring our I think we had 15, Angie, 15 or so of our youth senators. These are the students who lead our youth senate, and they are the representatives for the coalition of BSEUs that Angie talked about. And we had a 3-day leadership symposium with them virtually. Amazing speakers, workshops. I'll just give you one, and then Angie and you'll hear from them tomorrow and Wednesday. They'll tell you more. But one, here's an example for you. We had Dr. Terrence Roberts, one of the original Little Rock 9, Christina, and guests. One of the original 9 African-American students that integrated all white schools in Arkansas in 1957, where the National Guard and the tanks, he was one of those young men that stood there for his right to go and get an education. And he talked to our students about his experience of what it was like to go through that first year and how he feared for his life, but he got up every day and he continued to go to school. And can you imagine, Christina, a young person who's never had that story told to them by the person who lived the story? The BSCU brings you not just the story, the person that lived the story is coming to you. And imagine now, guess what? And then Angie and the board calls me as the board chair and says, we got to get him his book to read. So now they're all getting his book, Little Rock, Lessons from Little Rock, to read, and they're going to be doing an assignment. Why is that important? You just talked about it, Christina. Reading, writing, critical thinking. Well, guess what? They're going to be developing reading, writing, critical thinking. And we're changing the opportunity. So guess what? Shakespeare, maybe that doesn't relate to you. That's okay. You still should read about Macbeth and so on and so forth. But if we can still infuse the skill set by changing the model and still teach you critical thinking, reading, writing, and arithmetic, which we're also doing with another partner, we're now beginning to build the skill set to reaffirm that Black excellence that we know is within these students. So you tell me, Christina, what 16-year-old is excited about reading a book this summer? I got 15 of them right now.
Yeah,
Hello.
I could probably
back to you because I'll get talking. Go ahead.
That's okay. See, that's why I love this show, because we can keep it real, right? And you know, I have some thoughts about quite a few students that are tired of reading Huckleberry Finn, because that was a real big point of explosion in a lot of schools, that Huckleberry Finn segment. And why do we have to continue to read this and hear, you know, what is hate speech to the students, right? In the book. But I gotta validate what you're saying about the exposure that you offer and the leadership training and all of these wonderful things that you offer the children. Because I saw you guys in, what was it, January or February, pre-COVID, right?
At our conference.
Our conference in March.
Yes.
Right, up in San Francisco.
We were running from COVID.
350, a ballroom of 350 scholars.
And that, it was amazing. And I'll tell you, part of the reason is because, you know, a lot of people, when they think about California, they only think about maybe one city, right? And they see like this large Black presence that Hollywood tries to portray, but it's not really actual and factual. As a matter of fact, you know, our children are attending schools where they're like 1 to 3% Black students in like a 3,500 populated school. right? And so how much exposure do they really have if we do not introduce them outside of that environment to what's real, what's historical, you know? And so I appreciate that. When I came, I saw just the children and their just participation with each other, their friendship, what they were learning. I learned a lot, you know. There were some things that I didn't know. The quilt making thing was astounding to me. Yeah. And so I was like, wow, like this should be happening all across the state. And our children, especially the ones that I know suffer because they're the 1%ers, right? In that population, just that's it. And they're just like suffocating, looking for someone that looks like them, looking for some curriculum that reflects who they are, right? And not being able to have that. And so I'm so grateful that you brought that up because yes, that cultural congruence piece is very huge, very huge. I don't want my children to go to a school where the only Black people working there is the security guard and the lunch person. Okay. I've seen it, you know. Our children need to see Black people thriving in admin positions, educator positions, decision-making positions, school board, right? You need to see all of that because that is what they're going to aspire to be like. And so I appreciate what you guys are doing.
And I want Angie to talk about this, Christina, but I think another component that is really critical and powerful that we're doing is also empowering students to be part of empowering other students. And so one of the things that you may not have missed, I'm not sure if it happened one of the 3 days you were there, but I want Angie to talk about the book drive and where that came from and the impact that that had, because it's not just about taking care of you, student, it's also about using your talent and your platform to help other students at the same time. That's how we get that ripple effect. So Angie, maybe you can spend a minute and tell the guest what else the BSU does to empower its community with the student leadership.
Well, I know the Youth Senate they initiated a community book drive and they wanted all of the BSUs to collect books. And so, you know, when they did it, they were just like, we have an illiteracy problem in our community. You know, we're not educated according to the numbers, you know, we're not performing where we should. So let's collect books. And then we partnered with a nonprofit called Reading Heart, which was started by an 8-year-old young lady named Danae Ferguson, who's Afro-Latina. And so she saw the need. And so she broke the world record for collecting books in 24 hours, something like 250,000 books or something, right? But anyway, so what our senators wanted to do is challenge each BSU to collect books in their schools. And then we were going to gather those books and then give them back to Reading Heart to share out. Well, as you know, because you were with us in March, we were running from Corona at that point, and a lot of us began to shut down. So in the end, the students collected just over 2,100 books. And so now with Reading Heart's help, they are giving out instructions to communities on building what they're called birdhouse libraries for their communities. And they set them up, and then the books that they collected, they will go into these birdhouses so that children or families can go and get books and encourage reading and then share the books amongst themselves. Because they're like, well, now the school's closed, what are we going to do? So they were like, let's put them back into our community. Books that they didn't even know existed, a lot of them. And our Whitting High School was actually Mount Eden out of Hayward. They collected 791 books. That's one BSU group, you know? And so when you get kids engaged in doing things that they see will directly affect their communities and they're giving back, it changes their whole outlook on how they engage. Totally. The other thing that we do is our Black Minds Matter competition, where we are challenging our students to look at the data, do the data digs, figure out what these issues are, and come up with the solution. Not just air the problem, but you develop the solution that you think is going to work and support your community, our systems, in order to improve the way that they engage us as Black youth and Black community members. And it's just amazing what they come back with. I mean, we had health, we had school engagement, we've had, there's students in Bayview, one of the poorest communities in San Francisco. They totally just revamped the entire community when they went after a liquor store in their community, talking about you sell junk to us and we want better. So they boycotted the store and told their community, don't buy anything from this store. And then they were honored on the state floor of the assembly to say, do you hear what these kids are telling us? That's what we want to see in our communities, is that our Black children understand that their voices have power.
Yes.
So affirm them every day. We have our student, I don't know if you still have our program, Christina, but you saw our student creed.
I do.
In there, and I can share it with the viewers if they want to see it. But you know, we encourage our kids to affirm themselves, like Ramsey said, because nobody else is going to do it for them.
Yeah, we would definitely love for you to share that information, you know, for the parents that may want to share that information with their students. But yes, thank you. So here it is up here. Thank you.
That's our I'm trying to get to, oh darn. You know what? I'm gonna have to pull it up again because that's our standards. I wanted to, and we'll share this with everybody. But I'll pull it up.
You could go over that, and then if you want to bring up the creed, that's fine too.
Okay. Well, Ramsey, go ahead and let me pull it up again.
Sure. So I mean, hopefully, Christina, that gives you, you know, perspective that it's certainly about exposure and teaching them things that they don't know, but it's also about affirming that you can do something to make a difference right where you are. And that's what that book drive was about. We keep coming back to that reading and that writing, critical thinking, and books are powerful. We keep saying that knowledge is power, and we believe there's a lot of power in the device that they all hold in their hand, but there's still something fundamental about the paper and the book, and we want to make sure they don't get too afraid of using the book. And just to kind of frame it so it's simple, we sat back and said, you know, what can we hold ourselves accountable to? So acronyms help kids learn, but they also help us be able to produce measurable results as an organization. And so our acronym is what we've talked about, and it's ELA. First, you have to expose them. Then you have to make sure they learn about that which they've been exposed to. So that would be your L. So it's expose, it's learn. And then here's the big one that the BSU is really good at and is going to be even better at. It's application. So you are exposed to that which you didn't know, you learn something about it, and now how do you apply that principle going forward? And so we will have Wednesday, we have two of our senators that went to Selma to march alongside, I'll let them tell the story because otherwise I'll steal their thunder, but they had an amazing journey recrossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and that Selma, where Selma the movie happened, and that was kind of made in Hollywood. They went to the real deal and saw it, but one of the people they met was Congresswoman Barbara Lee. And what we did as an application principle, they had an assignment in the Institute where they had to read a letter that Congresswoman Barbara Lee wrote to the Military and Defense Committee, where she was arguing for a reduction in the $740 billion defense budget for an allocation of that to be put towards the COVID virus pandemic fight in communities of color. Now, I'll come back to you, Christina, again, what 16-year-old is pulling up a congressional letter that's authored by a woman who, guess what, looks like them, who they met in Selma? Now they're understanding how that woman is in a policy position to potentially advocate for support and resources to help their community that is suffering disproportionately to the coronavirus. And so you have 16, 17-year-olds who are now interested in that conversation because they got exposed to someone who's leading legislation. They learned about it, and now they apply it by writing their own response to her response. Do you agree or do you not agree, and why? Policy and civic engagement is a key part of our puzzle. And I'll let Angie talk about that, but we also are talking about how do you train them to become civically minded and equipped to take their campaign into the political process to advocate for change. So there's a lot that we're doing, and that's just another piece of the puzzle. So Angie, I don't know if you've got your technology ready, but that is a way to also see what else we're doing.
So, I mean, in conjunction with everything Ramsey said, you can ask these kids to do a lot of things, but if we can't affirm their excellence, like he was saying, you're telling children how wonderful and beautiful they are and how brilliant they are, and that they have the ability to take on systems and change them. So this is the student creed, and this was written by Dr. Chika Akua, who is an associate professor at Clark Atlanta University, but he was one of our keynotes when we were in San Jose a couple of years ago. And he wrote this for his students, and we asked him, could we adopt it for our students? Because we truly feel that when students speak this to themselves on a daily basis, it will help them to move through and navigate through these systems that are anti-Black, that can at times be very hostile. But we know that if children can speak to themselves and say, I am a student seeking to be a scholar, and the standard for me is excellence today and tomorrow. I'm disciplined, I'm focused, and I'm on time, especially when they have a teacher telling them, you ain't this, you ain't that, you're trouble, right? They can speak these truths saying, I am organized, I am respectful, I am responsible. And then we always leave them with the one thing is like, it's not always just about you, but what you can give back to your community. And that's when they say, I'm on a mission to elevate myself, my family, my community, and humanity. That's what we're seeing in the streets today, is our young people saying, I am standing up for humanity. George Floyd deserved better. Breonna Taylor deserved better. And we are walking these streets in peaceful protests on behalf of those people. And it is my duty to do this work. So this is just our student creed, and it's in our programs, it's on our website, and our students are given this every year as a reminder. We ask them to print it, we ask their advisors to print them, let them put it up on their mirrors or whatever to remind them daily before they walk into that campus that you are the most important and beautiful thing walking the planet today. So
can you tell parents where to find, and I'm sorry, I had my camera off while you were presenting. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell parents where to find the website, how to find you guys?
Absolutely. Our website is www.blackstudents, the letter C and the letter U, so BSCU is in there, but blackstudents, cu.us.
Okay, so I'm typing it into the field. So www.
Black students with an S, the letter C, the letter U, .us.
Okay, parents, so I'm posting this right in the, as you're watching. So you have this information and you can go check it out. Definitely want you to go and look at what they do. I witnessed it myself and I'm amazed, and just ready for when my kids can go and join in when the state opens back up, but definitely want to be watching for some of those online. Yes, the online, things that you guys are offering. Is there some final stuff that you want to share before we close out?
I think so. I think, first of all, and I'll let Angie certainly preview them better, but I really hope folks tune in to your show Tuesday and Wednesday, because that's who you really want to hear from. Angie and I will talk all day and we're happy for you to listen, but really you should hear from the students themselves who can articulate how it's changed their life better than we ever can. So tomorrow we have 2 of our alumni, and then Wednesday we have 2 of our current students. And I really hope and I encourage folks to listen to them and their stories as much as they've heard ours. And also we want to make sure that we thank the folks who have been very supportive of our efforts. And certainly the California Endowment has been a very big supporter of our work, and we want to acknowledge our partners. The Satterberg Foundation has been a huge supporter of our work, and the San Francisco Foundation has been a huge supporter of our work. And as you know, Christina, no one can do this work by themselves. You need partners, you need supporters, you need champions. And so we want to make sure we also take this opportunity to acknowledge some of the folks who have been great sponsors of our work, so that you can hear the great stories you'll hear Tuesday and Wednesday from our students.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for the sponsors. Thank you for supporting and believing in our children. And I'm thankful for you all. Thank you for just being there to build such great, things and put them in place for our children to help them thrive. And so, do you have a final word of advice for those watching?
Angie, why don't you give it, please?
I strongly encourage, I know school is technically out, but I would really encourage parents and educators at this time to realize that this is our season for change and to engage, talk to your students, talk to your parents, so that when we come back in the fall and we know it's going to look different, we can't go back to things as they were. And so I would really encourage educators, especially administrators that may be listening to this call, is to really embrace your communities of color, really begin listening circles and hearing from them on behalf of their children and bring them into the conversation for change. Because if we don't do these things and we don't take these steps now, we are not going to come out of this better than we went into it. And that is the goal. So if you have students of color that want to lead, that are asking you to hear them, listen to them. Their experiences are different. They need us to listen. But in listening, include them at the table of the conversation so that we're not making decisions for children of color without their voices being heard.
Amen. And that's a good word right there. And so thank you so much, Ramsey and Angie, for joining me. We at National Parents Union support the voice of the parents and the children. Definitely focused on Black and brown children, what is happening, and changing that, right? And so I'm so appreciative of you guys coming and sharing and allowing for the students to speak over the next 2 days. Thank you again. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. And so and to everyone watching, I hope that you're all well. I hope that you're all thriving. You've been watching Managing Day to Day with me, Christina Laster, and National Parents Union. We will see you again tomorrow, same place, same time, but be sure to tune in to those other shows that we also offer throughout the day. There's something for everyone right there. And so I'll see you again. Goodbye, America's beautiful children. We love you. Bye-bye.